Thank you so much for invitation. I'm happy being here, full of thoughts and ideas. Well, what I want to talk about now is why developing a coherent research system for trans-border areas is so important, especially for in-transition and post-transition countries, for Mediterranean area as well. Creating new models of development which take into consideration quality of life and welfare indicators, we noticed interesting phenomena. It turned out that trans-border areas are characterized by specific social economic development patterns. What is important is the fact that this specificity concerns objective and subjective measures. I wonder if you know that the trans-border areas cover more than 30% of the whole territory of Europe, what you can see on this slide. The limitation was made taking into account the distance of up to 50 kilometers from the border. Specificity of trans-border areas can be looked at from various perspectives. One of them is the scale of unregistered trade. Unregistered trade means all goods which are not registered on custom documents but can be legally transferred across the border. It doesn't cover shadow economy. The results of a survey concerning unregistered trade conducted by Polish official statistics turned out to be unexpected. For example, in 2014, the expenses incurred on the purchase of goods by Ukrainians amounted to over $1 billion, whereas by Belarusians amounted to $700 billion. Over. What accounted for, as you can see, 24 and 31% of the whole Polish exports to these countries, respectively. So, it came out that the scale of unregistered trade is surprisingly high. Well, the survey also proved that the choice of the distance of 50 kilometers from the border was appropriate one. Now I'd like to draw your attention to this slide. Consequently, this process in trans-border areas have significant impact on the economic growth. The green parts of the bars show the rate of economic growth if we would not take into consideration the trans-border balance of trade. The red parts illustrate pure share of this balance in economic growth. However, the nature of trans-border processes is the reason why this process cannot last indefinitely. So, as you can see, the red shares can be slightly lower or slightly higher, but they still sustain the process of the economic growth in analyzed period. Therefore, in order to look at these trans-border processes in a more systematic way, two synthetic indicators pertaining to objective and subjective aspects of quality of life were built. Obviously, these synthetic indicators were prepared based on partial indicators which are listed on this slide. So, here you can see the results of this analysis. Area marked with red line shows group of spatial units which are characterized by relatively low level of development in terms of objective indicators on the one hand, and on the other hand, relatively high level of subjective assessment of quality of life. What is crucial that all these spatial units come from trans-border areas. Well, with the aim of calculating this phenomena precisely, distortion measure was created. It is worth stressing that the 45-degree line should reflect the best relationship between objective and subjective indicators. Taking into account this distortion measure expressed with figures and its visualization, we came to the conclusion that the highest distortion from the model is observed in transborder areas. I'd like to put emphasis on another one, evidence of specificity in transborder areas, focusing only on subjective approach now. It is expressed by two simple measures, that is mean and relative deviation from mean in comparison to interior areas. Based on statistical tests, there is statistically a significant difference in assessing life domains done by individuals between border areas and interior areas. Moreover, this difference is noticeable even within border areas, taking into consideration each neighboring country separately. Especially, as you can see, it is connected with such domain as meeting basic needs and available goods and services. Well, let's move to the conclusions. Owing to globalization process, the economy becomes a blurred system, a fuzzy system in many cases, with supranational labor markets, goods and services market being created. On the one hand, we can observe integration processes. The most recognizable one in Europe is the extended Schengen zone. But on the other hand, disintegration processes are visible. Everybody knows what's going on in Ukraine, Syria, etc. This integration processes are deepening differences in potentials, especially in transborder areas. It is similar to physics. The higher level of potentials, the higher activity of objects. And, but the key conclusion here is that if we conclude subjective quality of life aspects into the models, the results of our analysis usually change to some extent. But in the case of transborder areas, this change is a fundamental one. So, if we want to get a multidimensional cube, multidimensional picture of social economic development, we ought to include this subjective quality of life aspects, undoubtedly. And, this kind of analysis, this kind of models will be, in this case, like multidimensional cube. Thank you so much.